Something like what happened in the movie did happen to me. I was put in like this very satanic group chat with like rituals and stuff like that. And I just blocked it. Saved myself the whole plot. How are we, guys? Today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on A24's latest horror film, Undertone. It is the 2026 supernatural horror film directed and written by Ian Twosson. This is quite an experience, to say the least. The film stars Nina Carey and delivers one of the most unique horror experiences of the year, one driven almost entirely by sound. Now, this isn't your typical horror film. You don't just watch Undertone, you listen to it. And what you might hear might stay with you long after the movie ends. The story follows Evie, a skeptical co host on a paranormal podcast. While her partner believes in the supernatural, Evie has always grounded herself in logic. But everything changes when she moves back home to care for her dying mother. The podcast starts receiving mysterious audios from a couple claiming that their house is haunted. At first, it sounds like typical paranormal noises, but the deeper she listens, the more disturbing the recordings become. Voices, distortion, things that shouldn't be there are there. And the scariest part, the events in those recordings begin to mirror Evie's own life. Now, this film delivers quite a unique experiences when compared to other films, mostly considering that most of the characters are never seen, they're only heard, such as Evie's co-host on the Paranormal Podcast. And the horror unfolds through audio instead of visuals. And finally, Evie is often the only person on screen. This creates an unsettling experience where your imagination fills in the gaps, making it more terrifying. Now, despite Evie's skepticism, there is a supernatural force at play in this movie. Specifically, there's a demon named Abizail, an ancient female entity from the Testament of Solomon, known for stealing children. She is portrayed as a child-snatching, malevolent force that thrives on the guilt and traumatic stress of Evie, who is managing both pregnancy and her mother in hospice care. As the movie progresses, Evie and her co-host begin to investigate more and more into the audio files that seem to manifest this demon into reality more and more, which leads to the film's end, which ends in an ambiguous sequence where the entity seemingly causes intense destruction, with some interpretations suggests the demon acts as a manifestation of the protagonist's repressed trauma, guilt, and inability to escape the hereditary pain. This is where the film concludes. The in-theater experience with this film isn't like any other horror film that I have experienced to this date. Most horror films rely on visual storytelling through jump scares, scary characters, and a lot of different montages shown on screen. Now, while this film still carries those distinct characteristics of a horror film onto this film, it actually relies heavily on the audio aspect of the film. There is no escaping what's going on screen. You either have to look away, but you also have to shut your ears as well, because the audio engineering behind this film is magnificent. Now, I watched this in Dolby Cinema. I don't know if that format is still available to this day, but if you do have that chance, I highly recommend it to watch it in that format because of the surround sound capabilities of this film. If not, still watch it in the theaters because you are definitely going to need the best audio quality for this film. And one thing I do have to praise is the runtime of the film. It only clocks in at around an hour 30 minutes, which I think is the perfect amount of time to use that audio capabilities to its fullest potential. Because after that, it can definitely feel like a gimmick rather than something that's meant to tell a story. Now, most of the plot does occur with the audios that the podcast receives, and also the background noises that are happening while in the film. And you have to ask yourself many times, is that happening in the audio or is that happening around her? Since the audio is the main focus of this film, a lot of the plot does take place within the audio recordings that they're listening to, as well as the noises that are occurring around her as well. That's the scary part because if you don't listen, you don't understand the story. Now, as for the plot itself, I think this is a very interesting story about guilt and possibly also hereditary pain, cycles of trauma, trauma that's passed down from family member. It definitely plays into those themes, but a lot of these things are very thematic in the movie rather than it explicitly telling you what the plot is about. Now, this opens the door to a lot of theories and to a lot of speculation as to what undertone ultimately means. And there are plenty of great videos discussing those topics, and I highly recommend that you check them out. For me, it's about managing life and death. Evie is trying to manage the inevitable loss of her mother while also trying to prepare for the welcoming of a new life in the form of her baby. And her inability to manage those two parts of her life causes her to build guilt within her. This is why she becomes a heavy target for Abizail instead of her co-host. Evie is exhausted. She's exhausted from all the pain that she's carrying on with becoming a new mother and also taking care of and taking care of her mother as well. This could also manifest itself in guilt. Guilt that she may have not been there for her mother so much time because throughout the film, her mother wanted to spend more time with her, specifically at church, hoping that she's at least praying and stuff like that. But it doesn't seem like Evie was at all a present daughter in her mother's life. And also considering the father of Evie's upcoming child, he doesn't seem like a very present person. Almost makes it seem like Evie might be regretting her decision about having a child or having selected him as the father of her child. This film could serve as a warning to the consequences of holding on to grief, holding on to trauma, and possibly passing that down onto the next generation and the generation after that. Ian Towson has even come out to explain the inspiration behind the film and recalls a deep experience that he had where he was experiencing some very deep grief that was channeled within him from his experience of taking care of his parents who ultimately passed away from cancer. Which is why he might have chosen to make this a horror film because it could ultimately become a horror in anyone's life to succumb to the amount of grief that one hides within them. One thing I don't know, I do have to throw this out in case anybody sees this video and is wondering the same thing. I will have to watch this film when it ultimately comes out on streaming. I have no idea if I was tired while I was watching this film, but there were many times in the background where I felt like there was a reflection or a face, something like that in the background. And it happened too many times when I was watching this film for me to think that there's no way this is a coincidence. This could be due because, there are many optical illusions that you can probably look for too, like, those images that tell you, hey, look at this image for 5 seconds and then look at the wall. And then you could kind of see that image in your reality, like it kind of burned itself into your eyes. With the way that this movie is filmed, there's a lot of very still shots. There's not a lot of jump cuts. Everything's very still. Everything's kind of put into place. There's not a lot of cuts, like scissor reel type of style horror. So it is very possible that during the scenes where there's a character in frame, most of the time it's just Evie, that that image might have burnt itself into my retinas, that when it did cut to very dark corners of the home, I could see Evie or whatever other thing that burnt itself into my retinas, making it seem like there's something behind her. I have no idea. I have to rewatch the film and I have to see it when it comes out on streaming to see whether that's still the case, or if there's actually something that was behind there the whole time. Very, very creepy thing that I had to throw out. I have no idea if that was intentional or not. Ultimately, Undertone is an in-theater experience that I think everybody deserves to watch because of how unique this film is compared to a lot of other horror movies. It relies on a different aspect of horror that isn't visuals, but it's rather sound. So, which is why you need to watch this in theaters. I highly recommend it. It's a great film, and I would love to hear what your theories are on the demon and the overall message behind the film. Those are my thoughts on the film Undertone. Let me know what your thoughts are, share them below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you on the next one.